Man, oh man, sometimes in the off season it seems like your team does not make a move at all for weeks on end, and then suddenly, well, my friends, your team starts coming alive, and that being the case of our man Clem over here and his Minnesota Twins making move after move after move since that Carlos Correa signing only about a week or so ago. My man, you've got more news on that, but before we get to it, folks, welcome to Clem Hawks. I'm Yak, he's Clem. We're going to take you through tonight's video, I promise you that. If you're new to the channel, though, I'd love to have you consider hitting that subscribe button here on Clem Hawks. Just simply put, we'd love to have you aboard for more Minnesota Twins talk, Gillies TV covering the Blue Jays as much as you can, and filling in the cracks, both of us, all three of us, whatever you want to say, with the rest of it. So be so kind to hit that subscribe button. Clem, to you, my friend. The news started coming, and the news hasn't stopped coming for the Minnesota Twins.
Well, yeah, that's what we reported on a little bit earlier. If you haven't seen the Michael A. Taylor trade video, I just went ahead and did that maybe about an hour or two or three ago when this is going up. So big news for them. If, like I said, if you haven't seen that, basically the Twins got another outfielder. They also designated their dude AJ Alexi after having him for literally 2 weeks. They just said, "Yeah, we're going to designate you for assignment," and they yippied on out of there. But yeah, they've been making some moves, which is good. They still have some work to do, which is funny to say, but they have a pretty solid core of starting pitchers. Their players on the offensive side of things are looking good. They just need a little bit more help in the bullpen.
And I guess that's to your effect. I mean, would you designate the bullpen as the last area of improvement needed for this offseason? Would you kind of say maybe the bullpen's more of a spring training situation? If you're kind of looking at the bullpen as the last big issue, how if you're the Twins do you tackle said big issue?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to look at it, right? Like the biggest problem the Twins have always had is injuries followed by pitching. And mostly I would say they've never had the great starting pitcher ever. I mean, like Johan Santana is probably the last dude that was like super, super good and super consistent year in, year out, right? So that's clearly been the biggest issue. But I think they've solved that with a lot of different ways. Now they have six guys plus Paddock, who will make it seven that they can use in that starting rotation. So that's good. But yeah, the bullpen, I still think, is where they need to do some work. And it really there's a couple different ways to look at this too. It's like they have really good players. They have Jorge Lopez, who they got from the Orioles last year at the trade deadline. They have Duran. He's a flamethrower, 101 mile an hour easy, right? Like they got two good guys in the back end. Then you've seen guys who can really shine, like uh, you've got Emilio Pagan, who is either really, really good or really, really bad. Trevor McGill, again, really, really good in some parts of it, falls apart in other parts of it. And a lot of that is put on the starters not going very far into games. Like, I think Josh Winder is maybe a good example of this. They used him as the opener before, and then you're putting a lot of stress in your bullpen on these bullpen days when you're only asking a guy like that to go 2 innings, and then your starters only go 3, 4, 5 innings. Like you're putting so much pressure on your bullpen, creating a lot of stress, a lot of injuries that happen there. And these guys who are usually so good, I would even point to Emilio Pagan, Trevor McGill, like those guys, they have to do all the work. So, like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done in the bullpen, but they do have those solid core guys. If McGill, Pagan, I mean, even like a guy like Moran or Alcala, like if they can do halfway decent, like they kind of have been, again, hit or miss, but for the most part, I think they're pretty consistent. If they can do things that are average, I think that the Twins would have most of their problems solved.
So now, I guess to that effect, how do you line up the rotation to allow the bullpen guys the most effective games they can play, right? Is if you're saying, well, the opener is not really an option for this Minnesota Twins bullpen, if guys need a little bit of more length, how do you set up the rotation to allow that length to actually translate from the starters to the back end of the bullpen into saves, into wins, into securing victories, and trying to push, obviously, for the playoffs.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just getting through guys, going through the innings. Like you got a guy like Griffin Jax, I think is maybe a perfect example. Started a few games last year, like, and he was doing fine. But when he got moved to the bullpen, I think he really shined, and that was because he got more days off. He was in situations, the normal stuff that you'd hear about baseball stuff. But like, you've got guys that you can really give, like Pablo Lopez. He's going to give you 180 innings a year. But then you throw Griffin Jax behind him every fourth day, third day, get him some reps. Like that's a 1-2 punch that's pretty solid. You overuse that, it's not gonna be great. And I think you then run into the same problem the Phillies had in the World Series this last year. The Twins have, I think I counted it, two left-handed pitchers in their bullpen, and then Brent Hedrick. I don't know who that is. He doesn't even have a picture on MLB.com, but he is. If you count him, there's three guys that are left-handed. The Phillies had the same problem where they had to use, I think it was Alvarado, every single game of the World Series, right? Like they could not play matchups, they could not give him rest. They had to use him all the time. That's going to be a problem for the Twins if they don't go out and get one more solid left-handed pitcher. You're going to rely on Moran all the time, and you can't do that. So that's the key is have Pablo Lopez do good, have Sonny Gray do good. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they're not injured. Give those games to Jax. Give those games to Duran that they need to, but then play matchups accordingly so that you can use those right-handed guys. You're not overusing the left-handed guys and then having to go to Jax, your better reliever, day in and day out, if that makes sense. I think it does, but yeah, you just need one more piece, I think, which maybe is the whole conversation of why we started this video, but you just need one more piece to not put so much pressure on those good right-handed relievers.
So is there potentially a player within the organization already that, as I alluded to, right, maybe if this is a spring conversation, if that player is already in the organization, who is he and how does he play himself into the role that you're saying the Twins need?
Well, actually, there are two right-handed pitchers that I think will really do well this year, or I'd like to see them do well. Louie Varland is one of them. Um, I think he could be a really good starting pitcher, but he also has had some struggles too. He's really young though, so I wouldn't credit him to too much of a fault there. But like I can see him being a Griffin Jax kind of player, and I think Jax was one of those guys last year that came out of nowhere and really, like I said, did well, like especially for what he was asked to do. And Louis Varland can fit into that role exactly, which then I would argue you could probably trade one of them. You could trade a few other of these guys. Maybe if Pagan has a good year, I guess maybe even go after McGill, like get these other right-handed guys out of there who show potential early to allow Varland to get more opportunities and allow him to shine in a role like Jax did. The other one is Simon Woods Richardson. I think that he's so young, which is he's kind of hyped up, but he's very young. He's also a right-hander. I think that he's going to struggle, but if he does well, I think that he's going to have a very successful career ahead of him. There's not much to say on him. I think he did really well in the minors, but it's a different ball game in the major leagues. But those are two guys that I'm really excited about this year.
All right, folks, I'm Yak. He's Clem. You've got it. The Minnesota Twins pitching broken down at, well, almost the end point of January. We look forward, obviously, as pitchers and catchers report in what, about 25 days or so from now? We look forward to seeing if anything else changes here over the course of that next 25 days. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. And if you're returning for another video, thank you so much for being aboard with us tonight. Have a great night, my friends.